Like you and the 200 million other Amazon Prime members all across the world, I couldn't help but at least search around a little bit on Amazon Prime Day. A 43-inch smart TV for $100, brand new iPad for $250, the new Echo Show 5 for $45, and polarized Ray-Bans for $75. I mean, these deals are insane. And it gets me thinking, why would Amazon do something like this? Easy answer would be it makes them more money, more profit up front. Maybe July is typically a slow month for Prime purchases, but surely throwing around 50 to 80% discounts on expensive items will hurt their bottom line, and admittedly probably our wallets too. Is Amazon Prime Day actually profitable for the company? If it's not profitable and they are losing money, has the day become so much of a staple that it's too big to shut down? At this point, it's more of an expectation than a privilege for Prime members, and this made me curious. Let's get into the money side of things, the financials, the data, and actually see how much Amazon is making from their big July holiday, or losing. In the end, the money will show us the truth. I hope you enjoy. Amazon, among the largest retailers in the entire world, typically suffers from a summer shopping drought by mid-July. At least that's how the internet advertises it. People spend more money in the spring months than the summer and are still months away from their holiday spending spree. So, for Amazon's 20th anniversary, they launched Amazon Prime Day to drive additional sales during the middle of the year and help out their third quarter results. The event, as you probably already know, offers discounts of up to 80% on a broad range of items to Amazon Prime members. And these items are no joke. So what looks like an attempt from Amazon to boost midsummer spending with these ridiculous promotions, is it really worth it for Amazon to pull off? To accurately evaluate this event and the money side of things, we need to start with a basic understanding of Amazon's business model. Most of Amazon's growth as a company can be attributed to third-party sellers. In fact, half of all items sold on Amazon come from third-party sellers. Whether it be large organizations, small businesses, solo entrepreneurs, they can sell products on Amazon, but it comes at a cost. Amazon has many fees that are applied depending on the product. Referral fees that range from as low as 6% on personal computers to as high as 45% on device accessories. And don't forget, if you need Amazon to ship your order, you'll have to pay a fulfillment charge. And on top of all that, there are closing fees depending on what kind of product you're selling. So, as you could imagine, the majority of Amazon's revenue comes from online retail sales, making up more than 65% of their total revenue in 2022. And while we are here, I just want to mention their subscription service, Amazon Prime, as you know, only makes up 6.9%. Keep that number in mind for later. So now that we have a basic idea of how Amazon actually makes their money, it feels pretty obvious. The more sales, the better. And because midsummer retail spending isn't usually the most profitable time of year for Amazon, it makes sense for the holiday to be in July, to boost sales. At least that's what you might think. How about we just look at the numbers? Here are the US total retail sales dating back to 1992. There are two sets of data we can look at, seasonally adjusted sales or non-seasonally adjusted sales. Not super critical to our analysis, but worth mentioning. A seasonally adjusted annual rate essentially attempts to remove seasonal variations to create a more comparable dataset. During the holiday months, people are spending more money. Right after the holiday months, people aren't spending as much money, they are saving. These adjustments are made in an attempt to reduce those variations and typically used to make more accurate financial projections. For our purposes, that's enough of seasonal adjustments. And instead of just using one or the other, how about we just compare the two and identify which one is better for our analysis? Using some Excel manipulation as well as some basic mathematical functions, we can rank the months of the year by average retail sales dating back to 1992. As you can see here, and as we expected, January and February rank dead last in spending, and the holiday months, November and December, rank in the top two. It doesn't matter with seasonal adjustment or not. Two months that stick out in particular, as their rank does vary quite significantly between the two datasets, are May and September. But for our purposes, not a big deal. It just goes to show the difference between the two datasets. We care about July. It is clear that July ranks slightly above the overall average monthly value in either case, and therefore its average rank among the months sits slightly above the average at 6. I think this is already an important takeaway. July is considered a slightly above average month for spending, but there is a potential flaw with this analysis. We need to remove the years that have already included the July event. Maybe that's having a disproportionate impact on the data. So instead of taking the data from 1992 to 2022, let's remove all the years that Amazon Prime Day was already implemented. Interesting, no change in average rank. Okay, what about the years with Amazon Prime Day? Surely July will move up in the rankings. Everybody is out impulsively buying on that day. Also interesting, the average rank doesn't change. So no matter what way you slice it, July is already an above average month before Prime Day was implemented, as well as after. No change. And albeit this shouldn't come as too much of a surprise to us, as this data includes retail spending across the US as a whole. It is unlikely that Amazon sales as a company will have a noticeable impact on this massive dataset. Main point from this analysis is that July is already an above average spending month. So if that's the case, why would Amazon push buying in July when it's already considered above average? Why wouldn't they decide to launch it in the early winter months of the year, in January, February, when nobody is buying, as they are consistently the months with the least average sales over the last 30 years? You know, maybe boost some post-holiday sales, at least for those who have any money left. I even performed a similar analysis on the average personal savings rate per month. Generally speaking, the more savings, the more people are willing and able to spend. And let me tell you, these results reach a very similar conclusion. Again, July is sitting slightly above the average monthly savings rate from 1998 to 2019, excluding COVID years because of the excessive stimulus. July would actually be a pretty poor month for personal savings, including the dreaded years of 2020 and 2021. But I do think it's fair to leave those years out, as it does have a disproportionate impact on the data, and it was an unprecedented time. Okay, so personal savings rate, not a great month for July. Then another thought popped into my head. What about inventory? Inventory is the total value of goods that are intended to be sold, and typically a good financial measure to see if businesses are able to keep up with the coming demand. In other words, a high inventory would indicate a great month to launch massive promotions to get products out of warehouses and into the hands of consumers. Well, again, same thing. July is actually part of a quarter, Q3, that has relatively low inventory. Q4 and Q1 would actually be the best quarters to launch Prime Day in this case. How about another metric, Amazon's quarterly revenue? Do they typically perform weaker in the third quarter and are looking to bolster their bottom line to please investors? Good question. Well, when taking their average quarterly revenue since 2009, the second quarter, which considers the numbers from April, May, and June, is significantly weaker than all other quarters historically. Even when considering just the years after Prime was launched, the numbers still point to Q2 being the significantly weaker quarter. Considering all of the data and information that we just discussed, it would be reasonable to suggest that Q1 and Q2 are the best quarters to launch Prime Day strategically. In the ideal case, a promotional event like Prime would be launched during times with low average spending to encourage hesitant buyers, high personal savings rate, more opportunity on the table, high inventory, plenty of product ready to move off warehouse shelves, and low quarterly revenue to bolster sales and please investors. July meets none of these criteria. They have to be looking at something else. It just wouldn't make sense strategically. What are the real motives behind Prime Day? And that's just what the money will tell us. You see, Amazon's goal is not to increase their profitability during this day full of 50 to 80% discounts, or even to bolster their bottom line for Q3. Their objective is to drive Amazon Prime memberships, which in turn drives massive profitability in the long term. Remember, the discounts are only available to Amazon Prime members. Although the numbers just proved why July is the wrong month to launch the big event, it just really doesn't matter that much. And I understand this may not seem very profound at first mention, but hang in there with me for a second. Let's take a quick but essential pit stop, one that is absolutely necessary to understand Amazon's strategy. LTV, or lifetime value, is one of the most important terms in subscription-based businesses. And frankly, that's where the majority of Amazon's growth comes from. LTV is really just the total value that a customer is worth to the business over their entire lifetime of being a customer. If we take the average LTV that was calculated by this research paper, in 2023, a Prime member is worth $2,283 to the business, with a non-member being worth about $916. Well, why does this even matter? Here's where the math all comes together and shows the true power of lifetime value. If the average LTV of a Prime member is $2,283, then as Amazon, you should hypothetically be willing to pay up to $2,283 to acquire that customer in the first place. That way, you gain an additional customer and break even at the worst. So again, let's simplify this. Worst case, you acquire Little Jimmy. Little Jimmy asks mommy for a credit card and he goes onto Amazon and signs up as an Amazon Prime member. From Amazon's perspective, worst case, Little Jimmy will use his mommy's credit card to provide $2,283 in value back to the business. Little Jimmy's mom finds out and cuts his membership off. No more purchases for Little Jimmy. So from Amazon's perspective, they essentially paid zero for that customer. Think about it. Little Jimmy goes and tells his friends about Amazon Prime, and now they can steal their mom's credit cards and also provide value to Amazon, essentially for free. Amazon wins the trade. However, what if you only pay $2,000 for a new customer? Well, now you have $283 of additional profit. What about $1,000? That's over $1,000 of profit. So obviously, the less you pay for the customer, this value is known as the cost of acquisition, the more profitability you end up driving. Prime Day is really just a vehicle to drive additional memberships, and the math proves it. Gross sales on Prime Day alone look like this. The number of active Prime users looks like this. When looking at these data sets independently, they may not provide much insight, but let's do some simple manipulation. Why don't we take the difference year over year of users and gross sales to find the year-over-year growth values? In other words, the amount of users they gained from one year to the next and the amount of gross sales that they did from one year to the next. Now let's assume that only 10% of new Prime subscriptions come from Prime Day in a given year. Set the units equal, and then divide the gross sales on Prime Day year over year by the number of users year over year. This will give us the gross sales per user gained. Now, we just did a whole lot of math, but what does this even mean? And does this look familiar to you at all? Well, this is the magic. Although gross sales isn't equal to the cost of acquisition that we talked about earlier, it is a really good approximation in this case specifically. Think about it. Amazon has all of these incredible deals, intentionally taking a loss and reducing their profitability in the short term in order to drive additional Prime memberships. It's a trade-off. Amazon's gross sales, the sales that they do on Prime Day, can really be approximated to the losses they are willing to take to obtain more Prime memberships. Amazon doesn't give a flying if they lose money on Prime Day. Just look at these numbers. In 2017, Amazon was effectively paying $250 per new Prime member. With an average LTV of $2,283, that is an effective gross return of over 750% per customer. Albeit with these calculations, Amazon did not reach their goal in 2019 and would have gained plenty of new users, but overpaid in terms of selling their products at massive discounts. In other words, they overpaid to acquire their customers. All in all, you can clearly see that the day is typically extremely profitable when considering the long term, the LTV perspective. And this is really all to say that Amazon Prime Day is just a well-planned marketing scheme to drive new memberships, to drive future growth. They are willing to take a loss on products up front with all these crazy discounts in order to acquire new members that will be worth far more in the future. We prove that July does not match the ideal conditions to be selling products at a massive discount. The numbers and money show it all. They are playing the long game. Their Prime memberships are what drive their future growth. And although this strategy has proven to be super successful thus far, there does come a point of market saturation. At some point, you just can't keep adding new members. As Amazon Prime memberships reach that point of market saturation, more items will be bought during Prime Day. In other words, they will lose more money up front. Their cost to acquire new Prime members will rise. And ultimately, the holiday will prove to be an unprofitable event, at least in the United States. Amazon already has about 150 million, or about 75% of the entire US population under its belt. So really, how many more non-Prime members are there to acquire? Considering 81% of the younger age bracket already pays for Prime, and it seems unlikely that they will be able to convince the older generations, especially 55 plus and the boomers, it does seem that market saturation is around the corner. And although the event will no longer be as profitable in the United States, the event has now been launched in over 20 countries worldwide. And Amazon's expansion overseas, especially into Europe and India, opens the door to much greater opportunity. With their expansion into European and Indian markets, the Prime Day strategy will most likely replicate success similar to that in the United States. The US currently accounts for nearly 75% of Amazon's total Prime subscribers, with about 200 million globally. If just 5% of India's population subscribes, that will make for another 71 million Prime members, nearly a 40% growth rate. And we aren't even considering Europe's impact. So I don't foresee the event ending anytime soon, even with profitability flipping negative in the short term as the US market nears saturation and Amazon experiences initial growing pains overseas. It has become a part of consumer spending culture. And I don't know about you, if Amazon did end up canceling Prime Day, I could see people dropping their memberships purely out of spite and disappointment. Nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the money side of the Amazon Prime Day event. This honestly was a pretty cool explorative activity for me, as I was quite curious and I felt like others would benefit from this knowledge. It also turned out to be a really good marketing lesson, funnily enough. I'd love to hear what you guys thought about this video as well as the new series idea with the money side. Diving deeper into the money, the data, and the financials behind some of these technologies and business decisions. Maybe next time we could do a money side investigation of ChatGPT or some other AI technology. Let me know what you guys think. I appreciate you watching and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!